had to fire 25 people with my other asset managers. And I'm like, never again am I going to do this. I lost friends because we were a close-knit group, small company. We got to find a way to grow, but we're like, we got to grow just enough to support business when these things happen. And it could just be one or two assets. But I said, I never want to fire someone again because we lost business.
What do you think people get wrong about you, or what misconceptions do you think people have about you?
Growing up with a single mom who worked 3 jobs in small-town Minnesota, John Carlson learned early that perspective and grit shape who you become. That mindset carried him from sleeping on his grandparents' floor to leading an organization of over 800 people as CEO of Mark Taylor. A self-described introvert who rose from part-time leasing agent to the C-suite, he's built the company's success on a counterintuitive truth. The best leaders aren't afraid of their team's growth. They're energized by it.
I grew up with a single mom. She had me at 17 with high school sweetheart. They got married at 18, divorced at 19. She worked 2-3 jobs. Then she remarried at, I'd say I was like 9. And although I didn't have a lot of appreciation for my stepfather at the time, he instilled in me the power of being an entrepreneur, like thinking for yourself, don't follow the herd, and also, work ethic.
Do you feel like that is a big driving factor for why you choose to work hard today?
I think, if like.
John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to chat. So usually where I like to start, because I think it's most interesting, is your upbringing in your childhood and trying to get an understanding of that to get an informed understanding of who you are today. Because I think most of us are driven a lot by the things that happened in our early years. So
cannot agree more. I think those that are silver spoon, gifted everything, no adversity, a younger time frame in their life, really don't know how to fight.
Exactly.
And I think of one of my favorite books, Grit, by Angela Duckworth. And I had a decent upbringing, but there was some grittiness to my life, and I like that. Meaning it helped shape me. So I think there's a lot to be said about what happens to you before the age of 10. So I grew up with a single mom. So essentially, long story short, she had me at 17 with high school sweetheart. They got married at 18, divorced at 19. Dad was out of the picture. So it was just my mom, young kid trying to survive. Very blue collar family in southern Minnesota. And she worked 2-3 jobs, bartending and waitressing and all of those things. And eventually we just kind of found ourselves back to, okay, we have to go live with her parents, my grandparents. And they had a single, 1-bedroom apartment in Belle Plaine, Minnesota. And so we made it work. We slept on the floor for several years, and that was okay. Had food in the belly. I was loved. So, again, it's the yard line you start with. Everyone, some people are in front of you, some are behind you, but what do you do with it? And then she remarried at, I'd say I was like 9, and we moved to an even smaller farming community in southern Minnesota, which was pretty impactful to me at the time because I left, I was big into sports, and I had a lot of friends. And I went to a really small school, and something that really shaped me in 5th grade, I come into this classroom. It's a wooden floor, it's creaking, and there's only 21 students in this classroom, and I'm used to, much bigger school. And I sit down and, here's John Ghostwish was my name at the time, and before my mom remarried. And I'm like, okay, here it is. This is my new life. And the next day, I was told that I was a geek. I wasn't cool. So no one would talk to me.
By the other kids.
So I went to a new school and had no friends. And I wasn't that fond of my stepfather at the time, meaning we just got to kind of know him. So I was not a bad guy, but it was a lot of life-changing events at age 10. And I just remember not having any friends for that last half of the school year. Summer happens. I'm like, thank God. And I come back dreading 6th grade, first day. And sure enough, the first day we have a kickball tournament. Well, I'm athletic. This is no bullshit. This kid kicks the ball, hits the prettiest girl in my class, Kelly Brinke, I remember her name. Ball bounces off her shoulder, and I dive and catch it. Well, I find out later that day that she now had a crush on me, and now I'm cool. I'm like, how the hell does that happen? And from that moment on, I'm like, I will never pick on a kid. I will never think of someone as not cool. I don't give a shit what you're like how you're wired. And from that moment on, I was just different with people. And I think it changed me for the good. And then from age 10 till 18, my stepfather was a serial entrepreneur, workaholic. We had a trucking implement. We farmed 700, 800, 900 acres of soybeans and corn. We had pig barns, all of these things. And I felt like I was a full-time farmer / handyman when I was outside of school. So I was working nonstop. And although I didn't have a lot of appreciation for my stepfather at the time, he instilled in me the power of being an entrepreneur, like thinking for yourself, don't follow the herd, and also, work ethic, which was a big piece of it. And I felt like after graduating high school and going to college, I never worked another day in my life because I wasn't doing all of that labor. I mean, to get up at 3 a.m. to go to the fields and work all day, come home at midnight, sleep for 2 hours, and go back. Like that happened during harvesting season. Not all the time, but it certainly recalculated my mindset around work ethic.
So it was like before and after school?
Yes, or in the summer mostly.
Oh, in the
right?
summers
yeah.
mostly.
Or in the fall, yeah. So, corn's ready to be harvested. You got to be out there 24/7.
So going back to the school days, were you physically bullied ever or no?
No, I wouldn't say that was the case. Not at all. No, I was just, for about a half a year. It wasn't a long time. I think about kids that are picked on their entire life.
Yeah.
It was just enough to change me. And I certainly befriended folks that I never would have before in junior high and high school and beyond that. And there's a great, I think it's rule 7 or 8 in Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules of Life, like never underestimate what you can learn from the person sitting across from you. And I, of course, didn't know that then, but certainly it translates to me now. And I just remember, some of my closest friends were people that I probably would have never even hung out with if it wasn't for that experience. So it really shaped me.
How did you get close to them?
I think I was just open to, and oftentimes it was maybe they weren't a popular kid. Like, okay, so, I'm thinking, why is this kid standing here by himself? Why is he, not part of the circle, right? Oh, he's not into sports. I was into sports. So I easily had ins with my football, basketball, baseball teams. And, social life was easy for me. But I never forgot, and I think that's a piece of it, right? Humility matters, and I was still kind of cocky in high school because we were really good at sports and as teams, and won the state championship in 1993, and I'm dating myself now. But that never left me. Like, I remember, and this is a good story, so I leave high school, I go to technical school, and I go to Mankato State or Minnesota State University, and I'm like, wow, went from, this, athlete, or we were kind of the it crowd, and then now I'm just a kid in school, like just trying to figure it out. So I'm like, I felt kind of like I was back in 5th grade. I said, okay, it's okay. I'm going to go meet new people, and I did. And I just expanded my circle, and I just never forgot when I was 24. So I was with my girlfriend at the time, Megan, and I'd lived my entire life in Minnesota, her, I think, South Dakota and Minnesota only. And we just said, we gotta go explore, because I was traveling a lot. I skipped a bunch of things, but traveling across the world with a small company called VTech. And they helped pay for my school, get my engineering degree. And the best thing about that experience was I realized that Minnesota was not long for me. And traveling to different places, including Phoenix, Arizona, I absolutely love Phoenix. I remember coming here, I think the first time I came was in August of like 2000 or 1999. And it was, hotter than the sun, but it was clean. I went to the Pink Pony in Old Town Scottsdale, which was still open at the time. And there was just a vibrant scene. There was people laughing. There was girls everywhere. I mean, it was just a cool vibe.
Yeah.
And so when we were thinking about living somewhere else, I had the old paper map out, again, dating myself. And we circled Phoenix. I'm like, let's just go check out Phoenix for 2 days. What do we have to lose, right? We'll do a flight and hang out. So flew down, toured a bunch of apartment communities, hung out a little bit in Scottsdale. Chandler just kind of mixed it up. Second day, the very last community we're going to tour was this beautiful community I found in a gatefold in For Rent, and it was called San Cervantes, and it was a Mark Taylor development. I had no idea what Mark Taylor was, but I'm like, this place looks cool. So we get there at about 6:30 at night. It was closed. It had just opened. So there was just a handful of residents, but someone was kind enough to just kind of let us kind of peruse through the pool area. And I just remember seeing the amenity spaces for the first time. And keep in mind, we were used to living in a real crappy duplex in Mankato, Minnesota, probably a leaky roof, bad floors, etc. And I just remember seeing the sand beach pool, water features with the water flowing, music on the rock speakers, people in the pool having a good time, volleyball court. And I'm like, this is a resort.
This is different than. Can I ask you a question? Actually, going back to the one bedroom, I'm curious. You said you didn't have a tough upbringing growing up. Is that because you felt in that moment that, because outside looking in, I mean, if you're sleeping on the floor, I mean, it doesn't sound like, it sounds tough in general, but do you feel like in that moment it didn't feel like that?
I think that's exactly right. So I think the resolve of children is so substantial and resiliency because you don't know any different. I did have my buddy Jeremy.
But what about your friends? Like, did you not?
That's it. So my friend Jeremy, who I was close to, I thought he was the wealthiest kid alive because they had a house down the street, and he had Atari. He had his own bedroom. So I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I kind of projected onto him like, this is what I'd want to be. Like, I want to be like Jeremy and his family. It didn't take any. I mean, I knew how hard my mom was working, and we had a really close relationship.
What was your mom doing for work at the time?
She worked for she waitressed, and then she also eventually started working for it was like a factory in Chaska. I can't recall the name.
Did you have any siblings?
No, just me. A bunch of cousins. My mom's from a big family.
You would see her working long hours, and
so we living with mom and grandparents. So I really just saw my grandmother, who helped raise me as well, and my aunt Jean. So it was an interesting dynamic. Like, I just feel like, when you're in it, you don't know any different. Like, if I look back now from my life today, of course it would be different. It would be probably difficult to experience. Like, if I went back to that moment in a time machine, but I was excited about sports and my friends, and I had a good time and didn't think anything of it.
And you remember being happy and enjoying life and high school and sports.
Yeah, and then so when I moved to that smaller town, Amboy, Minnesota, my stepfather did well, and so that was unique for me. We didn't live high in the hog, as we would say back then, but we could do things. We can go out, we could have dinner. My mom eventually purchased a bar and grill called Bottoms Up in Amboy, or changed it to that name. So our takeout would be a burger from the bar or a pizza. We didn't have restaurants. We were in the middle of the country. But nonetheless, it was a different feeling for me. Like, if I needed shoes, I got shoes. So again, I felt like, wow, stars aligned, even though that 5th grade period was tough. And then I, kind of became immersed with my friends at that time, and life was pretty good. Okay,
so then with your stepdad, you were working long hours. So one thing I'm really curious about is, without jumping too far ahead, it sounds like pretty much from a young age, you were either working hard or you were exposed to hard work directly. Do you feel like that is a big driving factor for why you choose to work hard today?
Absolutely, and I feel like, a typical day would be, during the school year, it was always full sports. So it was a nonstop go.
And which sports did you play?
Football, basketball, baseball. Okay. Yeah. And then played softball in the summer, fast pitch softball, slow pitch softball. But much like my mom, when she was younger, I was just on the go, like always doing something. And certainly with work, I wanted to get, if it was the summertime, that's usually when I spent the most time. I mean, in school year, it's wintertime, there's no crops, it's different. Still stuff to do on the farm, but I felt like, in the summer I was working full time, doing as much as I could I had a whiteboard. I remember a whiteboard. I was making $5 an hour. He paid me, which was great. So I was like a little.
That's
worker.
Pretty cool. So you had some.
So I was making income. I was working a lot of hours, but I also had a little bit of time to have fun. But I really just never slowed down. So I think the pace of my life at that time helped build the character that I found myself into today. Or
did you enjoy making money at that time? Like,
always have. Yes. Yeah.
So seeing the $5, getting paid I
write 9 hours, 12, whatever it was. It was just like, okay, I'm making money, and it was a really good feeling.
That's pretty funny. So then you'd save all that money, and what did you do with it?
I just saved it.
You just saved it.
Yeah. I really didn't. They were good to me, so it wasn't like, I had to go buy my own Nintendo at the time. But I saved it and used it towards a car and, rent when I was in college and all of that stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So how were you as a student, like academics wise?
Mostly came easy to me. So I was an A student. So it wasn't, I didn't have to grind. If friends were doing work for 2 hours, I was doing it for an hour. So I took advanced math when I was, I think, 16 to 18 purposely because someone told me, and I still can't remember who it was, or in a conversation like, oh, you should consider electrical engineering. All I knew at that time was I did not want to be a farmer or work in the fields in Blue Earth County, Minnesota. That was not for me. So I was looking for any escape route, and engineering it was. So I went to technical school, MSU.
Well, why engineering?
Online.
Because you liked math and science.
I like math because it came easy to me.
Okay,
now I do my help my 13-year-old daughter's homework, and it's like, what the hell's happening?
Yeah.
It's a whole new world. And like, oh, honey, I did advanced calculus. She's like, sure you did. Like, no, I did.
Okay, so you chose engineering because you liked math. And then what engineering? It was
Electrical.
Electrical engineering.
Yeah. So I started working, so I had a relationship with a gentleman that worked at a company called VTech, which I mentioned earlier. Just a small pick-and-place semiconductor company, but they did business all over the world. So in simple form, they did a lot of, still in business today, testing of electronic components, and then they put them into tape and reel that would go into the board stuffing machines. So we partnered with 3M a lot. They were the packaging piece of the business. Yeah. And so I did design. I did a lot of PLC old coding. I did the training because we were a small company. So the great thing about that period of my life was I'd say one of my first mentors, Cornel Christia, was on the mechanical side, and he was probably 10 years older, from Romania, and brilliant guy, and very world traveler. And I was paired with him often when we traveled. So it could be Albuquerque, New Mexico, or it could be South Africa. And
this was for the first job.
The first major job. Yeah. So I loved it and really connected with him, and I think he helped me see the world differently, which was great. I think like any mentor, right? I mean, you start to expose yourself to different things.
Was that your first time outside of the country, or did you travel?
No, it was first time. I think the only trip we ever took was to Daytona Beach for spring break as a family. Drove to Daytona Beach from
Minnesota. This is like the first time officially out of the country.
Yeah, so I went Costa Rica, South Africa, China, Mexico, Canada. I mean, Malta, Europe. I mean, we were all over.
Okay,
it was fantastic.
That's what. And you were paired up with, and he was 10 years older.
Yeah, I'd say 10. Yeah. 10.
Why was he why was he a mentor for you?
I think we became fast friends in that company. The electrical side, it's a small company, but the electrical engineers were kind of they were like the younger kind of they were, I don't want to say the cooler side, but the mechanical guys were a little bit older. Mm-hmm. So picture a 40-year-old at the time. I'm 23. But they were kind of the staple of the company. They'd been there a long time. They're like, oh, who are these electrical guys, right? Mechanical versus electrical.
Yeah.
And I felt like, okay, this is bullshit. Like I can pair these. So I befriended them, all of them, and we'd go to lunch on Fridays. Like, what are you doing going to lunch with the mechanical guys? Like, why not, right? So again, it sparked me all the way back to 5th grade. Like, who cares if they're slightly older? Who cares if they're car guys? And they like their Taurus shows at the time. I didn't give a shit. And so we bonded, and I really bonded with Cornell because we traveled. He was my travel partner. So it was just it was eye-opening to see the world at that time. At wide eyes open, 22, trying to figure out life, and it was a really great experience for me.
And that was 5 years, or how long was that?
I think from age 20 until 25.
Okay.
So 21 until 25, or right there. Yeah.
So that was obviously a technical role. Like you were. What was the exact role?
So I did the electrical design schematics and then the PLC software. So it's pick and place machines. So it's basic software. Like anyone listening that does, it's not. Yeah. We did a little C++, but it was really PLC software, schematics and design. So it was interesting time for me, and it wasn't overwhelming for me. I wouldn't say I was a great electrical engineer. But it was certainly an engaging time for me. And I also realized some things about myself that I didn't want to do long term. And I felt like that probably wasn't the space for me long term.
Things?
I mean, I didn't know that, and I'll give you an example. So we went to one large conference in, I think it was Newport Beach or somewhere in California. I don't remember exactly where. It was in that area. Maybe it was Huntington. And it was a large trade show. And there was, all these engineers from across the country. And it was very isolated and cold. Like no one was communicating with each other. They bring in models and girls to hang out. And I'm like, I'm kind of a jovial, fun, like I want to, kind of mix it up.
Yeah.
And I realized that this wasn't my crowd, which was not that I was, just, saying that they're bad or someone I, don't see myself hanging out with, but long term, is this really the space for me? And I just kept getting this vibe that maybe there's something else out there. So I tried to mentally pivot, like maybe I'll do sales engineering or do something within the space, but not necessarily design back of the house, working in the back, doing schematics. It's just maybe that's not for me.
Do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm an introvert.
You're an
naturally,
introvert?
which is weird to say. Meaning I have to flex. Like at this conference, networking is, I have to be geared up because I love to, listen to podcasts. I like deep thinking.
Yeah.
And of course, with people that I'm close to or people I'm engaged with, conversation galore. But networking is, I have to ramp up. It's not, people think otherwise. They laugh at me. Like, oh, you're an extrovert. I'm not. Naturally, I'm an introvert.
Yeah. I could sense that a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you get energy just being by yourself, thinking, reading.
Yeah.
listening.
And one thing I really like about how I'm wired is I love to listen. Like I love to read the room. I love to get other perspectives. And I think that's always helped me a great deal. It's the old 2 ears open, mouth shut kind of thing. And I know it's benefited me. And there's a lot of great entrepreneurs and people that, you've read that say, listening's a really important skill set to grow. And I think when I became addicted to growth, personal growth, career growth, all of those things several years ago, I think I kind of doubled down on that. So it benefits me from an introvert perspective, but yeah, I'm not going to be the guy out there firing up conversations and trying to, go through 20 tables of people, and that's just not me.
Why are you addicted to growth? Why do you care about growth so much?
Man, I feel like, time is the most precious resource, as we all know. And, I think about most recently reading Brian Johnson's story about don't die. And I'm on some of his program now. I still cocktailed up.
On Blueprint?
I have some of his stuff. Like I have a lot of his stuff actually. And just kind of getting engaged into it. But not that, I'm not saying I don't want to die. But I feel like there's been periods in my life where maybe I just coasted. And maybe that was okay for me at the time. But then I look back, well, I could have done this, or I could have thought differently about these things. Certainly engaging in, reading, podcasts, growth, looking at people that have done this over many decades, or, whether it's multifamily or just any sector, just great human beings, and, talking about autobiographies and just learning from folks like that, because the reality is a lot of the things that they've gone through, those things translate today. It's just a different time period, but the situations are likely the same. Human behavior doesn't change, right? When people say history doesn't repeat itself, or it does, well, I don't think it does. I think it's just the human behavior. The history is different, but the
100%.
humans stay the same, right?
Yeah, you mentioned Charlie Munger. The most favorite chapter of any book that I've ever read is in Poor Charlie's Almanac, and it's the psychology of human misjudgment. Mm-hmm. And Charlie's whole thing is like exactly what you're saying. No matter what time period you look at, human psychology and human behavior is always the same. So his whole thesis is all you need to do is just understand humans really, really deeply, and you can translate that across anything.
I think that's right.
And it's really interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I just listened to a podcast with, trying to think of his name. I think it was Chase Hughes. Yeah, that's his name, if you heard of him. Behavioral, nonverbal science guy.
I actually haven't, no. On what podcast?
He was on Patrick...
O'Connor.
Patrick Bernard. It's three names. Patrick David Bernard.
Okay.
Or Patrick David Bernard. One of those two. I just started listening to him, so I apologize for butchering it. But he talks about a lot of the elements of how they read people, and he's trained, CIA, operative, all of those things, and just learning how to read the room, learning how to engage with someone. And he goes into great detail about, how your eyes move, how you stand, your posture, your motions, your tics, are you straight-faced? He's talking about serial killers and how they really have no ability to feel extrovertedly, so they're basically straight-faced. They could walk by someone who's getting killed and like, oh, I'm just going to eat my bar because I just opened my bar, and not think about that. Amazing things that he discussed, and thinking about how could I be him in a room with the skill sets that he has? He wrote a couple books, which I wrote down. I haven't read them yet. But how much further along he is in a room, like a networking room, a meeting, one-on-ones. I mean, light years ahead of others in terms of that aspect.
To me, it's so clear that you care about growth a lot. What I'm trying to understand, though, is like if you go one layer deeper, right? Like I'll give you an example for me. There's a couple reasons why I like growth and improving. One is I think it releases dopamine. I think like the more I achieve, the more I learn, I feel happier, I feel more accomplished. But if you go a layer deeper, I think it's because when I'm not growing, I don't know where my like self-worth is. Like I think I've tied a lot of my self-worth and my value to success and achievement. So what I've come to realize is as I like excavate the reasons why I am the way I am, one of the reasons why I like growing and growth is because it feels like if I'm improving, then I have value in the world in some way. Like how do you think about the deep reason as to why you care about growth?
I have some connection to that. I think also when you're younger, when I'm younger, okay, I really want to go get a nice car, right? I'm thinking about like if I'm 22. Can't wait to get a nice car because from a social perspective, it looks like I'm successful. Now I could give two shits, right? I mean, I have a car, but my point being is, over time, I think your priorities change for yourself. And as many of the autobiographies that you listen to, I mean, who cares what other people think, right? And I think when I was in 5th grade, I cared a lot. And I think most kids do. Something I try to translate to my 13-year-old Lillian, like, who cares what they think? And she's like, middle school's tough. Got to wear the same shoes. Like, got to fit in. I get it. I mean, I understand those dynamics. I was in middle school. But she also says, which I love, she's like, but in high school, I don't think anybody's really going to care. So just give me one more year. So, I mean, she's got perspective. And I just think when you think about self-worth value, and I think there's a moment in time where I'm like, there's so much I don't know, right? And I think it was at a time where I was probably hanging out with some people that were less humble, maybe not putting my best interests first, which is fine. But I think more and more I started to look for folks that lifted me up because I would do the same. I'm very much about supporting those around me, supporting their growth. I want to celebrate their successes. And man, that's cool when that happens, especially people you really care about. And I wanted to stay away or avoid kind of the toxic relationships. And I think if there's anything I could tell someone that's 25, like get rid of that, like flush that out right away because it's not going to help you, right? They're just going to continue to suck on you until they suck you dry and then move on to the next target. And that's relationships, it's friendships, whatever it is. Difficult to do if it's a family member, of course. But I've learned to, build up some walls around that stuff purposely so that I'm surrounding myself by, call it A players or people that are in a similar energy. And my wife and I, Stefani, we focus on that a lot. Like, what kind of energy are we putting in the universe? And I think when you put that growth mindset into I want to be better than yesterday. Don't compare yourself to others, right? That's the enemy of joy. There's a great quote. I compare myself to yesterday. And even if I just got slightly better, cool. But also, I think the other piece of that growth is when you do that, you say, I'm going to get slightly better. It also voids you of some bad decisions. Like, I know if I did that, like X, Y, Z, let's just say I'm going to go to the club and have a bottle of tequila and then kind of lose my inhibitions and make bad decisions, I'm not going to be better the next day. I'm going to be much worse. And who knows what could, spiral from that. So making really good decisions each day helps you get better. And I think it's tied to discipline. It's tied to, making sure that you're supporting yourself, doing what you say with your relationships, your coworkers, your loved ones. So I think growth is all tied to that. And I always challenge myself now, and I think of, leading an organization. I have 843 employees. I want the next employee that starts tomorrow to have the same success as someone that's been there 25 years. Let's give them the roadmap. Let's support them. And there's nothing more satisfying than seeing someone that started, 3 years ago. They've advanced 2-3 levels, and they've really hit their stride. They're really confident. And I'll give one example, and it's maybe a simple one, but Alyssa Jordan, she's an accountant on our team. I think she's been there 4 or 5 years. She used to read a book, very introverted, in the lunchroom on break like this, right? Not talk to anybody. Now she'll come in my office, plop down, hey, what's going on? Like, and it's so amazing to see that growth and that confidence. And I just think when you surround yourself by that, and that energy is a focus, that everyone starts to lean in on that. And I think that constitutes a high level of success if you can get people collectively doing that. We know together we accomplish more. So I think all of that ties back to growth. I know it's a long answer, but now I'm just like charged by it. Like you introduced just, I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday, the Founders podcast with Sinra. And I mean, I think I'm on 5 or 6 now and I love it. And it's just a new thing. Like it's just, mind opens. Whoa, I'm going to go this direction. I'm sure after 145 of them or whatever he has, the guy, I don't know what he does. He just reads 24 hours a day, but I'll find something in there that will take me to another place. And I think that's the most exciting thing.
One question I have, so going back to your daughter, when you think about the values that you want to impart on her, what comes to mind?
So years ago, I authored our 5 principles for Mark Taylor, and it was very personal to me. And it was partly some of the things I learned from Jeff, Mark, and Scott Taylor, our founders, great mentors of mine. And a core of that was just do the right thing. So it's pretty straightforward. All 5, be transparent, be better than yesterday, choose the right attitude, do the right thing, and take extreme ownership. So as most people pick up on when I sit down with my new hires on every Monday, I'll talk about those 5, and someone will obviously say, well, all 5 together makes, like, all 5 work in sync. And I go through these with her on the way to school. We talk about it, examples, all of those things. Sometimes she rolls her eyes, right? I mean, like, we're going to school. We want to talk about your principles, John. But, now she just kind of repeats them and then examples, and, it's a guide rail. And I think you can teach your kids a lot of things. I think you have to let them make mistakes. You can't overprotect them. I'm no perfect parent. I'm a stepfather, by the way. But it's my only daughter. Her dad's great, still in the picture, obviously. And I just, I want to give her life lessons. So she'll joke, like John says, life lessons. So you have a father, you have a great mother. She has a great supporting cast. So I'm just like, you're going to have to figure these things out. So I'm going to help you. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. Like, I'm not going to give you the answers, right? Homework to life. Like, how do you want to handle it? Like, what do you think you should do in this situation when your friend is being mean to you or won't text you back or whatever it is? So it's life lessons.
And extreme ownership is from Jocko.
That's one. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Jocko's great. Wow.
Who else do you look up to?
I'm an avid fan of Jordan Peterson. Obviously, he's been elevated through the missteps of the Canadian government and his turmoil that he's gone through. I think it's amazing, his story, just to survive, his illness, his wife's illness at the same time, and survive being, really canceled. I can't imagine what that's like. It's got to be overwhelming. Like you in a scholar like that builds into a platform and it's pulled away in seconds or days. That's remarkable. So that's someone I really look up to. Important figure in my life. I think of, I have so many different things I follow, but when I think about Simon Sinek and his infinite mindset, we talk a lot about being infinite in our organization, and a piece of that is being in business 40 years this year, but wanting to be in business another 40, 50, 60, and not resting on your laurels. And I think being infinite's a big piece of growth that ties together, of course, but having that mindset and really thinking about how do I get from here to there over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And last year we introduced through our growth our BHAGs, so big, hairy, audacious goals.
Yeah.
And we did it at every level, from top of the organization for our 2030 and beyond strategy down to every director, and now we're implementing it at every level. And it really gives clarity and transparency around, okay, this is what we really want to accomplish. And their goals. So it's not visionary, right? A little bit, but it's objectively something we're trying to accomplish. And it's amazing to see people really, I'll say, spark and join together and join forces and say, okay, we can do this. Like, okay, we got to start thinking this way, versus what I've seen in the past where, oh, we can't do that. Oh, that's not possible. Oh, we don't want to do it. So it really changes the mindset, which is just choosing the right attitude and looking at it differently. So a couple big influencers, I'd say.
What do you think people get wrong about you, or what misconceptions do you think people have about you?
I think, if, like anything, if someone meets you now, they see who you are as a person. Oh, you might have a nice jacket on, you're CEO of a company, or you have your own podcast. But did they see it's the Kobe Bryant? Did they see all of the work you did behind the scenes? And I think a lot about that. Like I think about, if I'm listening to Founders Podcast and I'm on my bike, on a weekend, I'll ride 10, 15, 20 miles, whatever it is, and kind of habit stack it. Like no one knows I'm trying to stay healthy. I'm trying to be great for my family. I'm trying to grow my mind. I think it's all the stuff you do behind the scenes. Like, are you willing to go take the extra effort? Reviewing our data at 5:00 on a Sunday, getting ready for the next day, prepping for, being prepared, being diligent. I think discipline's a big piece of it. Continuous discipline, I think, is a big piece of success. So I don't know if people see that in me. They might say, oh, he's been at Mark Taylor a long time. Well, I can tell you, I've never thought more about us getting better than I have yesterday or the day before. It's nothing about resting on our laurels. I don't think we're the greatest. I don't think we're the worst, but I think tomorrow we're going to be better. And I talk a lot about that with our internal teams. And I think that's the motivation for me. What could it be? And I tell you what, as my wife says, when you put it out there, it's driftwood, it's visionary, it's energy. Things happen. It's got to be visionary. It can't be words. You got to be able to visualize it. That was a Chase Hughes thing saying, I don't know why people write letters or words down. You can't visualize written language, right? That's something we've learned. Our brain doesn't even really know how to process that, but visually you can see it. So, I drive down certain streets on the way home because I visualize myself living there on Exeter or Camelback or things. I've done that for years. And I think it pushes you into two different scopes of energy.
Do you have like a vision board?
I have not a board, but I have images on my laptop. Yeah. And I should have more. I should have them everywhere.
What's your daily routine look like?
Depends on the day. So if I work, we have a gym that we work out in Tempe, a few of us within Mark Taylor. So it might be, Tuesday, Rise and Grind, it's 5:30.
You guys work out together?
Yeah. So Michael Wilson, my COO, and a few others, IT director on Samo, and different folks come in, right? So it's, we try to get more and more people to join us, but it's always 5:30 on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and then Saturdays get to sleep in until 7. And then I do my own stuff otherwise, but it keeps me on schedule. I love it. I can't wait till the alarm goes off at 4:55. I think that's a great time to get up.
What time do you sleep?
I try to go to bed between 9 and 10. Okay. So I'm trying to be a bit more tight to that based on the Brian Johnson stuff, right? Train the body the right way. So work out for an hour, come home, depending on if we have Lily that week. So we do 50-50. Do I take her to school that day? I try to always take her to school. So I'll rush, get ready, get her to school by 7:45 and then right to the office. And then usually it's 6 or 7 o'clock at night, depending on what's happening. I'll pick her up from dance, typically if we have her that week. If not, go home, hang out with the wife and the dogs, do some, relaxation for an hour, eat, try to eat before 8 o'clock. Think a little bit, think about, what I did today, what's on the agenda for the rest of the week, what are my goals? And I have I have a great executive coach, and I have a set of weekly, monthly, annual goals. And that truly pays off. Like when you set yourself up for, like, these are the things I'm going to accomplish, and you know what you have to do to get them. You're only letting yourself down if you say, I'm just going to not get up today. I'm not going to go to the gym, or maybe I just don't go to work. Like, you got to show up. So, and then the weekends, it could be Lily dance all weekend. She's nonstop dancing. She's a grinder, which I love.
She is a grinder?
It's natural. Yeah, she grinds. Wow. It's cool, man. She works her ass off. The dance teachers recognize it. So she's really taken off, which is cool. But sometimes I'll golf with the buddies. I don't really care that much about golf. but it's more about my camaraderie, hanging out with my friends. We're foodies, so we'll go out and eat a lot. So I probably spend more money than I should at the external dinner table. But we have scooters, little fat scooters. We drive around Arcadia, so Arcadia Light. So yeah, it's just it's a lot of family and friends.
How do you manage like pressure and stress normally? Is it exercise? Is it just like everything? Do you have anything unique?
I think I was described as a bit stoic at times, like meaning it might be happening here or, the duck in the water with the feet, but I feel like getting emotional, right, moving past that like 50% threshold where you're getting really emotional or stressed, it's not helping anyone. And I feel like if you're leading a team or a company or different teams, like you have to be steady, and letting emotion dictate outcome is always an issue for me. So I feel like I've done a nice job of regulating that. And these are things that, you can always get up in arms about them. And I think the best thing I do today is that I think small, like meaning, okay, if I was Elon Musk and I'm trying to run X and Doge and Tesla, like he's got a lot going on. He's okay. Like he regulates himself. I just have one company, one family. So I try to always put perspective on it. And perspective gives me an ability to be humble and not stress myself out. And I'm just not a big stress guy. My wife can tell when I'm, a little on that edge, but it's just perspective.
Yeah. I know you like Jocko. There's a couple things that I really like about him. One of my favorite videos on him is it's like a 2-minute video on YouTube, and I think it's titled Good or something. And his whole, have you seen it or heard of it?
Yes.
His whole thing in that video is so motivating. Whenever I'm like going through something, I listen to that. And the whole thing is like, he talks about how like anything that happens to him, no matter what it is, he's like, good. And
Good. Yeah, the whole time.
Like my investors like don't want to fund me, good. Like, I just lost a massive deal, good. And like, it's just reframing.
Reframing attitude. Totally.
Yeah.
I love that clip.
Yeah, because then you just like look at everything as an opportunity. Like everything in your life then just becomes an opportunity. Because if it's good, then it's like, then how do I like figure out the opportunity here and how can I grow? And there's like small things that I remember as a kid. Even my parents, like, as a kid, like they would be like, oh, can you go get me a glass of water? Or like, can you get me that from that room? And I remember even as a kid, I was like, okay, like this is good. Like I get to like exercise more and walk more. And like, I was like, you guys can relax.
I didn't have that gear when I was on the farm. I got to pick up more rocks.
I was like, I get more steps in, right? Like this is going to help me. And I think like reframing is such a useful thing, because then you're also, like you said, like you just feel empowered, and it's extreme ownership. And if you don't do that, then you're subject to the world, and the world is controlling you, and you have no ownership, and you can't take control of your outcome.
Yeah, I think about, there was a quote, I don't know who said it, but there's people that that could drown in a glass of water. Just everything is woe is me.
Yeah.
And I just think, reframing and just taking those opportunities. Like I make mistakes every day. Like, so you screw up, you figure it out, learn from that. That's experiences are just mistakes that you took advantage of in terms of learning from them. And I feel like, there's a lot of things I don't know. I'll get through it. But there's so much in terms of resources for us today. And I like the thing you talked about earlier in terms of envisioning, 5 great CEOs or people that you look up to and saying, okay, what would they do?
Yeah.
I think
I actually do that now on, sorry, I was just going to say on ChatGPT. It's actually a really cool thing. It's like if you have an issue, let's say choose the 5 people you respect. Just say, what would Michael Jordan do in this situation?
Yeah.
Or what would Kobe Bryant do in this situation? It's really cool.
Right. Yeah. So, I think all of those things are from perspective, mistakes, and then, it's one thing to make a mistake, but then learning from it, then seeing it through the next time. So not going back to like maybe your knee jerk, I'm going to go this way again, and expanding your playbook from a decision-making process. And I think, decisions, we all make decisions. And what's the old saying? When you think about risk management, what's the risk of saying yes and what's the risk of saying no?
Yeah.
And I think a lot about that in terms of, as we endeavor down different paths in business or different clients and all of these things we're trying to accomplish, if we say no, are we going to be okay? Probably. If we say yes, what's the opportunity, right? Well, is it evergreen? Is there a place there? So, I think perspective and right sizing your decision making through that makes a lot of sense.
So another Jockoism that I like is discipline equals freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of counterintuitive to a lot of people, right? Because when you think of somebody who is disciplined, I think the average or the common understanding is, oh, they're very rigid. They have their schedule. They have this. They have that. How do you think about like discipline actually being unlocking more freedom?
So important. Michael Wilson, our CEO, is one of the most disciplined people I know. And I think about discipline through sustainability. So all I mean by that is, and this is another Simon Sinek, so if Shiv goes and works out for 3 hours today, you're going to be sore and tired. And but if you don't do it again, what's the outcome? But if you did that, just say you did an hour 4 days a week for the next year, you're going to look completely different. The outcome's different, right? You feel different, you look different, your body's different, you're in shape, all of those things. Not saying you're not, but just from that story. And I think the ability to be disciplined over time, that matters, because it's easy. I mean, this is January. What is it? New Year's resolution time. You go to the gyms. Aria's gym was packed this morning. So I was told I wasn't here. But can you sustain that? And that's about making those decisions. Like, can you in that moment say, I'm going to hit the alarm or I'm going to go? And I always say, if I hit the alarm, I'm letting myself down, right? I'm the victim here, right? And I hate victim mentality, but meaning I'm choosing to allow myself to not make the right decision in this moment, and because I'm tired. Okay, good, you're tired, go, right? Who cares? And so yeah, I mean, I think discipline is a big piece of success, and I think it's an underutilized talking point for a lot of groups, like in companies specifically.
Yeah,
like are we disciplined enough to execute this, to see this thing through? And everyone wants to gratify. I want a new title today. I want this new business tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, some things take a long time.
Even a discipline as a moat or a strategy, right? I think sometimes even in business, like when we think about our business, everybody wants to think of like the 10x feature or the 10x product or the 10x thing that's going to like take you somewhere else. But the reality is like a lot of the best companies just have unreasonable standard for execution day after day after day. And that ability to execute 1% more than the other companies, compounded over months, years, decades, that makes them a completely different company.
I think so. And I mean, yes, we've expanded some of our business lines through consulting, but it all starts with, all of that is feathered out from a discipline in asset management, right, or development. And I look at all of the areas that we really went specialized in, and trying to find a way to really maximize the potential of each role or each part of the business. And I think you could argue that third-party management, as an example, is really a commodity. But can you take very specific elements, including human capital, and elevate it to the next level and the next level, and 1%, 5%, and in the moment you don't necessarily see it, but I can see certain things specifically over the last 2 years in our company, like, wow, they get it. And they're sharp enough, they're talented enough, they're engaged enough, they're disciplined. They're like, oh, and now this is 2.0. Like, wow, this looks great. And I can think of lots of things just within our brand people and excellence division. Like, they're doing a lot of great things that will not only shape, I think, our business, but probably all of multifamily over time if it's done correctly. And all I mean by correctly is it continues to evolve. And that's what excites me the most, seeing those things happen.
We haven't really talked about your journey from like a community manager or leasing agent all the way to a president. I think having been in this industry for only 4 or 5 years, I just love how you have stories of people that like through just sheer work ethic and discipline and execution, like are able to go from a leasing agent to a president. Like, how would you distill the, like, it sounds like it's a lot of it is like what we've already been talking about, discipline, work ethic, all that stuff. But anything else that we haven't talked about that you think influenced your path from going from leasing agent to president, CEO?
I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't say luck, right? There's always luck involved, but also putting yourself in situations, like being situational, taking advantage of opportunities. Opportunities come and go, but grabbing on to those when they happen, even if you don't know what it means, but just just, I can think back to when I was interviewing for asset management, and I really spent a lot of time on focusing on what I should say in the interview with my internal boss at the time. And I put a lot of time into it. And I think preparation matters, right? There's some discipline to that. Did I know everything? No. Was I most of the experience? Certainly not. I've been in the business like 2 years. But for whatever reason, he took a chance on me. And I feel like in that moment, and it was just an interview, he understood what I brought to the table prior to that, whatever that meant. But I really think I showed him in that moment that I was hungry and I wanted it. And I think there's so many things to be said about that. And I see it today. I'll see the brightest, sharpest, educated person in the company, and I don't know if I want to do that, or what ifs. And I see others saying, "Tell me what hill I got to run up, and we'll figure it out." Like, that's just a different mindset. And I felt like I had the mindset, like, no, I can do this. I can, and fake it till you make it kind of thing. And they said yes. And I think after that, so when I became an asset manager, I'm like, okay, I really have to understand real estate. I really got to double down and focus on that. And that became my focus really for 3 or 4 years, and now really forever, but really trying to understand deal flow and cap rates and, basic stuff, but understanding real estate at the highest level. And then when I became vice president in 2008, I really shifted to a focus on new business. Like, okay, how do we bring new business to this environment, our company? And we didn't have a new business platform, didn't add one until 2016. But nonetheless, I learned a lot of things about, working with REITs or big groups or private investors, and again, reading the room. What are they looking for? And then trying to help us as a company build our management platform around that. How do we support these? Why would they choose Mark Taylor, right? Mm-hmm. And then understanding what are their pain points, and just, again, listening, trying to understand the business, the environment. And I think fast forward to today, we have big institutional clients, the Starlights, the JP Morgans, the UBSs, down to mom and pops. And there's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences, and you got to meet all of those needs. Not to mention customers today, which have some pretty high expectations, which they should.
What's your favorite part of the business
People.
to work on?
People. Yeah. So our
people growth.
Yeah, our strategic initiatives are people excellence and growth, people first. And I feel like when you think about that people element, I just know when you invest in our culture, invest in our people, it's an exponential return. And you can't fake a culture, you can't pay for it. I'll never forget a guy I worked with a long time, went to another organization back in 2006 or 7, and it was like a year and a half later, and just said, "Hey, I just want to let you know," he goes, "never underappreciate your culture at Mark Taylor." And he was right. And certainly it's translated into a lot of success because of that. And it affords us to make mistakes too, and we pick each other up. And I think that fabric, that connectivity is really beneficial for an organization, because things don't always go perfect, as you know, in business, or, you lose business, things happen. But we stick together, and when you focus on them, and they, it's got to be authentic. And there's a lot of people, we care about our people, but then they do nothing, right? So their actions don't speak of, priority expects, a certain outcome. When you expect certain outcomes for people and you do those things, your actions meet that expectation, it goes a long way. And I think that we're thriving because of that.
When you think about your journey of over 2 decades at Mark Taylor, what comes to mind as some of the hardest things you've had to do?
I think there's been many challenges. Cyber attack. We had some issues back in 2011 on the back of the house. I mean, we had, in 2006, we were led down a pathway we were selling, I think, all 7 of our owned assets except 1, which is about 40% of our revenue. So we weren't a big third-party manager then. So I think those 7 deals translated into us having just 11 deals afterwards. So it was a really small shop in 2006. And 2 days prior to the sale happening, there was an email that was leaked incorrectly through a group email that we weren't going to manage. It was going to be Lincoln, but we were led to believe that we were going to stay on. Mm. So 2 days later, I had to fire 25 people with my other asset managers. And I'm like, never again am I going to do this. I lost friends, right? Because we were a close knit group, small company, and like we can't allow ourselves, like kind of doing the post autopsy on our business at the time. Like we got to find a way to grow, and that kind of sparked me into that mindset in 2008. Well, really 2006 to 8, but as VP, I had more abilities to do so. But like we got to grow just enough to support business when these things happen. And it could just be one or two assets. But I said, I never want to fire someone again because we lost business, right? Something they didn't do. Like they maybe did a great job, but now you're leaving Mark Taylor because we weren't prepared enough. We didn't build up enough capacity in terms of our new business footprint. So that was one of the hardest things I've done, and I've never had to do it since, which is great. Meaning we retain people when we, real estate's transactional, but let's make sure we have enough of a pipeline to support our growth and the people in case that happens.
Where do you see the next 10 years of your career? I mean, you've got, you're now on LinkedIn, you just got promoted to CEO?
Yes.
Congrats.
Yes. Thank you.
What do you see as the next chapter?
I think a lot of things around, obviously we're going to stay true to our core roots. So, we're going to follow our principles, our mission, our vision. We'll focus specifically on making sure that our property management is 5-star, and we talk a lot about 5-star and have a lot of programs internally to do so. But that translates into centralization. So we've been building that platform through what we call ION, our Integrated Operations Network, and really refining that again and again and again. We're on version 75, whatever that is. And never really focusing on, how bad it was a year ago, but how good it can be. And I'm most excited about that, which feeds into our consulting platform. And we try to be evergreen from a development perspective. So, there's a lot of moving parts there. We're hyper-focused on education and partnering with schools and colleges and institutional groups. So, I think that piece of the business will expand into more of a training type role, so potentially a Mark Taylor type university or academy, and I think those are things that we'll start to give back. Yes, we'll make money, but the idea is we're going to help others learn skill sets to help them grow. I think of myself at 18 with no skills. What direction am I going to go? And that could be a myriad of things, but some of that will tie back to multifamily. Some of it might be leadership. I don't know. But building a platform where we can elevate others. And I'm excited about that. And obviously creating more pathways for career success internally and just continue to do what we do.
I have one more question just because I'm curious. What's your relationship with money like?
With money?
Yeah.
From a visionary perspective, I won't tell you what my number is.
Relationship
relationship. No, I'm just saying meaning.
Yeah.
Because that is part of it. The relationship. Okay, if money's a priority, which it is for me, but it's not. I just need to make money. It's okay if I reach this number, how can I help others not only in this space, but around the world? So I'm not saying I want to be a trillionaire. That's not my point. But can I get to a point where I can take care of my family, which is most important to me? I want to make sure that my grandchildren are taken care of, not silver spoon, but that they have enough to survive. But how do I help others and not outside of my family? And certainly that helps. And then I think, as we've seen with this last election, money influences, and I think with the right people with the right money in hand, I'll say it that way, can influence. And we talk a lot about influence internally. Money certainly affords influence. You can do it other ways, but I like to have that as another card. But I'd say it's not my priority for sure. But it's an outcome. It's almost like when you think, I'm kind of waffling around it, but when you think about profit's great. We have a profitable business, but it's a result of things that we do really well. So I focus on those things. I know the profit will come. I just truly believe in that. So it's not about, hey, if we do this, meaning if we hit this target, we'll get this kind of, I'll say distribution. It's about doing all of the right things here and that flows afterwards.
You said to give your grandchildren and children enough to be comfortable. Do you worry that will put a dent on their drive? Like, how do you think about balancing that? Because Charlie Munger has this line where he says that, like, if you're wealthy, you basically have no choice but to give your kids money, otherwise they'll hate you. And I think it's like one of the hardest problems that a lot of people don't talk about, right? Like, it's such an afterthought when all these people become rich. What happens like to the next generation? I feel like nobody thinks about that because they're so focused on naturally building your career and all of that. But like something I think about if I end up doing well, it's a serious problem because then you're affecting the next generation if you don't handle it correctly. So how do you see that?
I think about it, the founder of Hyundai, right, from Korea. I mean, he started with nothing. Right? I mean, dirt boy eating bark, right, when he was a kid, just to survive. I think you can do it in ways where I've seen people do it really badly, but I've also seen some of my own mentors do it really well. And that's creating a foundation of principles for your kids and not just giving them the money. Like, oh, I'll help you here and there, but you have to carve yourself out. Like, it's more like, here's the trust. Someday it will be yours, but you only get so much of it. Like, you got to go figure it out. So I think, if you say, here's a blank check, or you're going to get $10 million on your 10th birthday, that's not for me. I would never want to do that. Even to a point like with Lillian, she's very entrepreneurial. She'll do, with her friend last year, she was doing Snack Shack. So bringing out snacks to the neighborhood, selling stuff. And I'm like, well, you got to pay the dad tax. She's like, what do you mean? And she was really pissed off at first. I'm like, well, who put the electricity in the scooters that you take out? Who provided the food that you sell? All of that's me, right? So, and your mom. So we're going to take 10%. So she reluctantly gives me the 10%, but now it's like she gets it. Like, I'm taking dad tax.
That's pretty good. I really like that, actually. That's awesome. That's really cool. John, thank you for being here and for sharing and talking. I feel like we covered a lot, more than I thought. So super appreciate you. And I'm glad to know you. And hopefully we'll trade notes on books and podcasts and all that stuff that we read.
I think so. And for the group, I mean, we just met. I've followed you on LinkedIn and know some of the folks you've interviewed, but I'm glad we met. And again, it's about growth, and I think we'll probably share a lot of stuff over the next several years, and I'm looking forward to it.
Where can people find out more about you?
LinkedIn, marktaylor.com. I think those are two great resources. So yeah.
Awesome.
Find me there.
Thank you.